Congressman Mike Waltz is a combat veteran, unlike most of the people who are talking about these terrorist acts that have taken back. Welcome, Congressman. I'm already seeing on MSNBC and CNN and in some of the print media the effort to limit Israel's ability to destroy this enemy. The Biden administration, while Biden gives this speech, out of the other side of his mouth, his administration is saying proportionality, trying to tie their hands. They're also trying to negotiate with the Israelis in advance of a ground offensive, how to get Gazian citizens out. Now, Congressman, it is not possible for Israel to do all these things. They don't control Gaza and win a war, is it?
Yeah, Mark, you and I know how this is going to play out. Israel is going to go do what it must do, what it has to do in Gaza, and what the Israeli people expect the IDF to do. But I promise you, sadly, within maybe a week, if not sooner, of Israel being on the ground, you are going to start to see all the anti-Semites in the UN start to squawk. Then you're going to see the EU get weak-kneed, and then you're going to see the Biden administration start to talk about a ceasefire and proportionality and all of those things. And look, they already showed their true colors from the U.S. Office of Palestinian Affairs and the tweet that they deleted, and Blinken as well when he said he agreed with Erdogan that we need to talk about de-escalation in ceasefires, which he since then deleted. So we know where this administration already wants to go. And like I said, they're already saying the quiet part out loud.
Let's talk about the out loud part they said out loud. I was watching Biden today, very patriotic. Everyone notices he never mentioned Iran. His administration continues to say, well, we believe Iran's a bad actor. We can't prove they're behind it. Even though Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran have said Iran was behind it, I guess they need more proof than that. Now, all that said, Congressman, we're not cutting off their oil. That is, we're not going to enforce the oil embargo that's been placed on them. Quite the opposite. They have $70 billion because we wouldn't. They're not freezing the $6 billion. They're not stopping the hundreds and hundreds of millions going to the Palestinians. We just had a federal judge, you may not have heard this, order as a result of the case in which Ronnie Jackson is the petitioner, but it's brought by America First Legal, and my wife Julie was even working on that case. That said they're violating the Taylor Force Act, which means money, our taxpayer money, is going to Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, and they're killing people. And the judge ruled, you're right. That's what we have so far, and the judge is going to now oversee a motions trial, I guess, in which they're demanding more information about where this money went. We are funding terrorists and terrorist regimes, are we not?
Oh, absolutely, Mark. You laid out what you would have hoped Biden would have announced, or any president with a spine that's coherent. I would have added to your excellent list. I would have added to that demanding that Qatar extradite Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, who is literally sitting in a five-star hotel in Doha, Qatar, cheering this whole thing on as he's probably having some chai or latte with his Iranian handlers. So there's so much more he should have done. There's not just refreezing the $6 billion, the hostage money, and literally all they have to do, Mark, is pull back the assurance letters that they gave to the international banking system. They gave these banks what they call assurance letters saying sanctions won't apply to the $6 billion. They can pull that right back. It's refrozen. They can also stop the waivers of the $10 billion on top of that $6 billion that's going that are waivers for Iraq and other countries to buy Iranian oil. We already know that there's $30 billion a year from Chinese purchases of Iranian oil, And then something else that nobody is talking about is the $7 billion line of credit that they have from the IMF. Those are all things that we should have heard Biden talking about. Those are all things that we could do right now. But yet we didn't even hear Iran come out of his mouth. At the end of the day, Iran is the head of the snake, Mark. Iran has declared war on the West. They've declared war on democracy. They've declared war on peace. They absolutely hated and were existentially threatened by the Abraham Accords. And I firmly believe that Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, saying to Brett Baer, we are this close, which would have mean all of the Gulf Arabs would have been aligned with Israel, which would have been absolutely historic, was the final straw that they unleashed their foot soldiers. And this is, Israel, Gaza, Lebanon, those are all battlefields for Iran's war on Israel and the United States. And until we acknowledge that, till we declare it, till we hear it from a commander-in-chief, this is just going to continue.
And on top of this, they're going to get nuclear weapons, and Biden's not going to do a damn thing about it. He's not going to do it. He has done the opposite. He's made it easier for them to get nuclear weapons. We've used the statistics on this program before. And can you imagine them with nuclear weapons, blackmailing, threatening, maybe using, and not just in the Middle East, but us?
Well, look, the thing that, one could only imagine what they're going to do under a nuclear umbrella, much less use them. And if they would, as they are absolutely promising to do, to literally wipe Israel off the face of the earth. But the thing, I say this over and over again, the thing the regime cares about the most, clearly not its own people, is its power, is its wallet. And we have to go back to maximum pressure. We had them at less than 200,000 barrels a day just a few years ago. Now they're up to a 5-year high of 4 million barrels a day.
Congressman Michael Waltz, the Democrat Party in America has a problem that it will not address. Pelosi wouldn't address it, Hakeem Jeffries, Joe Biden, Schumer. They have a Marxist wing within their party that is thoroughly anti-Semitic. They call themselves the Democratic Socialists. That's the organization that backs them. They are thoroughly anti-Semitic. And they represent the Hamas wing of the Democrat Party. And, President Biden, again, in a generality, he talks about anti-Semitism, and then he talks about Muslims, and then he talks about on and on and on. But he won't call out his own party. He won't call out the squad, and there's more than the squad. He won't call out the anti-Semites on our college campuses and so forth. He's a coward, isn't he?
Well, Mark, I call the squad the Hamas caucus because that's what they've become. And just how ironic, how moronic is it to have Tlaib standing there next to a Palestinian flag and also next to a gay pride flag, knowing how ethnic minorities, knowing how they, anyone LGBTQ is treated by Hamas, by Hezbollah, by all of these terrorist organizations. It's just ridiculous. And they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. But what is so disturbing to me is when you see polling of 18 to 25-year-olds that are coming off of these, coming out of the indoctrination that's going on in our college campuses by the Democratic Socialists, and they're showing 40 to 50% support for these terrorists. At the same time, wanting to have some type of activism for all of these other things that the terrorists are absolutely against, that the terrorists would execute them for if they dared step foot into Gaza spouting this stuff. It's just it doesn't make any sense. It's moronic, and you're absolutely right. The leaders of the Democrat Party just don't have the guts to call it what it is, which is anti-Semitic, and this is just terrorism, and it's pure evil.
And then we have the narrative beginning. It's starting with the liberals and the media and elsewhere, leftists, that maybe this happened because of Netanyahu, you see, because he wanted to have these reforms put in his country, even though he and his coalition were elected for these reasons. And these reforms, were so horrific that he actually wanted to reintroduce democracy in his country, challenging a judicial oligarchy. So Ehud Barak, who was a failed prime minister, almost gave the whole country away under Clinton, to Arafat. He's organized this effort to undermine the elected government in Israel. He's organized the effort with enormous sums of money, not just in Israel, but coming from billionaires in the United States and Europe. And they work closely with the Biden administration. That's one of the reasons Biden refused to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu, the elected leader of the country. And so they try to tear the country apart. They were talking about a civil war. They enlisted some of the IDF generals. They enlisted some of the intelligence leaders and so forth and so on. And so, their enemies look at this. Their enemies look at this and they say to themselves, okay, look at the Washington administration. Look at what these people are doing to the elected government in Israel, and among other things, you talked about Saudi Arabia and Israel and so forth. So for them, the stars lined up. For the Nazis, the stars lined up. And it is amazing to me that the Democrat Party in this country, that the Biden administration, and that the radical left in Israel takes no responsibility for anything. Now, I'm not saying responsibility for terrorism and the atrocities, but for weakening Israel and showing that to their evil outside enemies, no?
No, well, and then on top of that, as we were just saying, by not calling out anti-Semitism, you're normalizing it, particularly on our college campuses when you have people chanting, literally chanting, "Gas the Jews," and that's not called out. It's disgusting, Mark. I had the opportunity to sit down when we visited Israel earlier this year with the Prime Minister, and he walked us through how he was working through their legislative process, their constitutional process, that the oligarchy that was and is their judicial system. But you're going to decry that as anti-democratic, as you said that they were elected to do. I mean, people voted for him and his coalition government. His two top priorities were judicial reform. You may disagree with it, but you don't get to then call that an apartheid state or anti-democratic. And then two, transformative peace with Saudi Arabia. Those were the man's two top objectives. And then to hear these activists hypocritically calling him out, I don't see Tlaib calling out the Iranian regime for shooting schoolgirls. I don't see them calling out the regime for literally hanging people in the street if they dare protest. I don't see the abuse of women on a systematic, regular basis getting called out by these terrorist governments. I mean, Mark, I've literally seen Islamic extremists. They call themselves the Taliban, but they're really all the same. Machine gun a girls' school with the little girls in it. I don't see that type of behavior being called out. If you want to talk about evil forces that are anti-democratic, that's where they need to be loud and proud. But instead, they want to go after an elected prime minister who is working through a process to reform their judiciary and wants peace in the Middle East. And all I'm going to continue to do is call them out at every step of the way, because it's just, as I said, the whole thing disgusts me.
Congressman is an as an Afghani war veteran. How many years were we in Afghanistan? 20, 21?
20 years.
Okay,
20
so
years.
Israel, it may take Israel several months to take care of business. I don't think they'll be fighting that war with this particular terrorist group for 21 years. But they do need some time. And the problem is, in the United States, that's time for the anti-Semites, that's time for these other groups, that's time even for the Democrat Party that has always hated Netanyahu and has tried to undermine his administration, to organize a massive propaganda campaign, which is what they always do.
Right.
And so you and I and others who believe in liberty, who believe in our alliance with Israel, who believe that the enemy are the terrorists who've attacked us over and over again and so forth and so on, we need to stand up to this, don't we?
Well, we are standing up, and we'll continue to stand up, Mark. Yeah, you're right, and we need to support Israel as they head into what is going to be a brutal, difficult, and long fight. My fear is you're going to see a hostage chain to every single military target. I do expect some type of deal to be cut. I hope we can at least get the women and children out. But they're going to go in hard. And, the other shoe that I'm waiting to drop is the Northern Front. Oh, yeah. And, I fear that they're going to get bogged down in street-to-street fighting, which is going to be difficult. The most vulnerable part of a tank is from the top, and those high-rise buildings are going to give a lot of opportunity, and then they have those massive tunnel networks. And I was able to visit the Iron Dome headquarters. Their MO is to completely overwhelm the Iron Dome, literally make it run out of bullets with dumb rockets, and then follow it up with precision-guided missiles that Iran has provided to go after Israel's critical infrastructure. But take a step back right now, Mark, and Putin is happy. He has a second front. The Ayatollah is happy. He'll trade proxy casualties for his foot soldiers in Gaza and Lebanon all day long for Israeli casualties. And China's happy because they're all too pleased to see us, get, from their perspective, bogged down helping Israel. So this is this unholy evil trinity that is running circles around the Biden administration right now, that has a bunch of academics who are feckless and weak, and our adversaries see this, and they're taking full advantage of it.
All right, I know you have these speaker votes or whatever's going on there. I have deep resentment for these 8 people who claim to be conservatives who are not conservatives. I've looked at their background. I've looked at what they've done. But they sure as hell get a lot of TV time as a result of it. And I want to thank you for your service to the country and your service now, Mike Waltz. You take care of yourself, and I'd love to have you back. Mark,
in the military, we call this a circular firing squad. Mm-hmm. And I'll just remind everybody that the enemy is outside the wire, and they have shown their evil face. That's what we should be focused on. So I'll do everything we can to get our act together here so that we can fight the true enemy abroad. Thanks, Mark.
All right. God bless you.